So Zach and I had talked about this yesterday. We had talked about those guys who just missed out on the championship. Do you remember how we started with that, Zach? Where that started from? How we got onto that tangent?
No. Oh, how did we get on? It was somebody about. Oh, hold on. It wasn't when we were talking, Luke. We were talking about the Celtics. Hold on. It was Grant Williams. We talked about Grant Williams.
Yeah, but I think that was it. Somehow we got.
Is that the first one? How he had played for the Celtics and then went to the Mavs.
I can get you exactly there. It was Chris Middleton trade, because Chris Middleton goes from not a contender really anymore, but a pretty good franchise, to Washington. And then we talked about Grant Williams to Charlotte. And
that's how it was.
His last two teams.
We talked about Kyle Kuzma being compared to Jason Tatum.
Being better than Jason Tatum.
I remember all this now. It's all coming back to me.
So that inspired me to do the top 5 Boston sports athletes who just missed the championship season in the 2000s. We're keeping it in the 2000s. I have one honorable mention from pre-21st century. But here we go. Without any further ado. Number 5, Al Jefferson. It kind of gets forgotten that he was traded that year because obviously he's traded in the big Garnett deal. And we kind of forget about him because he doesn't have that great a career afterwards. But this is a guy who was drafted by the Celtics, was a real up-and-comer with the Celtics. He was kind of the replacement for Antoine Walker, but wasn't as frustrating as Antoine Walker. And it looked like there was an opportunity to build around Paul Pierce and Al Jefferson for years to come. But obviously, with the option to get Kevin Garnett, that's where they went. So Al, and everyone says was a really good guy and became a good leader in the pros for years, but never played for very good teams. So that stinks that he did not get to win it the next year with the Celtics, but obviously there would be no Celtics championship but for Kevin Garnett. That happens with a couple of guys on this list, by the way, that if they were on the team, they wouldn't have won the championship. Number 4, Bruce Armstrong of the Patriots. One of the few Patriots to get his number retired. Number 78, played for the Patriots from 1986 to 2000. And in 2001, the Patriots win their first ever Super Bowl. Was part of the all-decade team for the 80s and the 90s for the Patriots, and the 50th anniversary team. Like, outside of John Hanna, he might be the best offensive lineman to ever play for them. And that's not the only Patriots offensive lineman on this list. But Bruce Armstrong, certainly a pillar of that franchise, almost won the Super Bowl in 96. Does not get to win it. No one. Yeah, you kind of feel bad. Even Drew Bledsoe got one that year because he was on the team that year. He played in the AFC Championship game and led them to victory. So Bruce Armstrong slates in at number 4. Boy, like that one must suck because you're just missing out on everything, right? Like 01, they begin a dynasty. It's like one of the great teams ever, like one of the great Cinderella stories. You're playing with Brady. Then the 2002, you get the new stadium, and it's like a completely different era for the Patriots. And he just misses out on that. Kind of forced out in 01 or 2000, the end of 2000. That was probably what needed to happen, but just missed the Super Bowl championship. Number 3, and the most recent one on this list, Marcus Smart. Smart traded in 2023 at the end of that season where they crash out in Game 7 of the conference finals to Miami. He gets traded in a 3-team deal that nets the Celtics not only a draft pick, but also Kristaps Porzingis. And this was not long ago, people, but there was a lot of division around this trade among Celtics fans, amongst Green Teamers, who said, Marcus Smart's the heart of the team. How could you trade this guy? He gets on the floor. And he did, man. And Marcus Smart did a lot for the growth of that team. Obviously did a ton in the community. Like, was a fun player to watch, but at times was super frustrating. He thought he was the best player on the floor most times he walked onto the floor. And what's funny is what would have been one of the great Celtics moments ever had they won the series was that Game 6 against Miami with Derek White has the tip in at the buzzer to beat Miami and force the Game 7. Well, that comes off of Marcus Smart shooting a fadeaway 3, which was definitely not the call to get Marcus Smart open for a fadeaway. But it was very divisive at the time. People did not want to trade Marcus Smart, especially for a guy in Porzingis, who was oft injured. He had a ton of injury history. Obviously, there was rumors of him being a bad teammate with Luka in Dallas and was kind of run out of town there. And it was a risk, at least it seemed to be for fans. And what it ended up being was the best move they could have possibly made. Porzingis was obviously fantastic for the Celtics, still is. Mismatch nightmare really opens up the kind of game that Joe Mazzulla wants to play. And, as injury prone as he was and still is, right? I mean, still is. Marcus Smart, like at the wrong side of 30 with the way he plays, I think the Celtics knew they were on borrowed time. And it was one of those ballsy moves that you have to make, and obviously becomes better later that summer because Drew Holiday joins the Celtics in another trade. And I mean, I said it on this show a ton last spring when we were just starting this thing out, which was there were so many plays, so many moments in that championship run where Drew Holiday was making plays that Marcus Smart would not have, and Marcus Smart would have made a mistake. So it's still love that he like all the service he gave to the Celtics, but it's too bad in that he was, I think maybe more than anyone on this list, maybe except for the next guy, was on a part of some really good teams and part of one or two that probably should have won a title and didn't. And then he just misses out and becomes kind of like the missing piece in a backwards way. So stinks for Marcus Smart. Number 2, another Patriots offensive lineman, Logan Mankins. This is a tough one. This is a real tough one. He's drafted 2 months after the Patriots win Super Bowl 39, and he is traded about 5 months before they win their next Super Bowl 49. Obviously, you could do the math there. A good 9 seasons with the Patriots, one of the best offensive linemen in their history, a couple all-pro teams, more Pro Bowls, a guy that Brady really liked having around on that offensive line. It's just... It's so tough to find the Patriots that played in the 2000s that just miss it, right? Randy Moss does not win one. Wes Welker does not win one. But the biggest miss of all of them is Logan Mankins just missing Super Bowl 39 on the back end and just missing Super Bowl 49 on the front end. Tough for a guy who could be a Hall of Famer. That's a real bad break to be on probably 2 Patriots all-decade teams in the 2000s and somehow not have a Super Bowl ring. It's almost impossible to do. But he gets, and this was not like a missing piece trade either. They didn't want to extend him, and so they trade him to Tampa for Brian Timms, who doesn't do much for that team, and they go on to win the Super Bowl. Number 1, and certainly the most gut-wrenching for Boston fans, and Zach, you're going to have to bear with me here because this guy did actually get a championship ring, but was not on the team when it happened. 2004, Red Sox, July 31st, my 7th birthday, they trade Nomar Garciaparra, absolute icon of the team, of the franchise. Like, you want to say Marcus Smart was the heart and soul of the Celtics. This guy was the Red Sox in terms of position players for that era, right? Manny was pretty good. He had been there the last few years, and obviously Ortiz was coming into his own. But really, for a couple of years there, the icons of the team were Pedro and Nomar. And for kids of my age, that's how we got into the Red Sox. Nomar! Like, one of my favorite Red Sox ever still. I still have a Nomar jersey. But kind of a tumultuous 04 season. He gets traded at the deadline for that defense deal where they get Orlando Cabrera and Doug Mankiewicz, and their defense really shores up. They start to win a lot, and they go on to win the World Series, breaking the curse. Obviously the most iconic Red Sox team ever, if not the most iconic baseball team ever. And Nomar should be a part of that, but it's definitely one of those where it was like, you might not have won with him on the team at that point. He was a real distraction in 04 with the injuries that he could have played through and didn't, specifically that July game against the Yankees, bitching about his contract, turned down a big contract the year before, missed out on tens of millions of dollars. That's just one where he does get the ring because he played on the team for half the season, but you would have loved to have seen him out there for the last out and celebrating and in the parade. But that's just the fucking way she goes sometimes. That has to be the most heartbreaking for Red Sox fans. I mean, not losing any sleep because they won the World Series, but Nomar, one of the, I don't know, 10 or 15 greatest Red Sox of all time for a 125-year-old franchise. Maybe top 20 now, but to have him not be, out there for it, that stinks. So that one was shocking, but the Red Sox, I mean, that was a big reason why they won the World Series, was because of that defense they got in that deal when they dealt Nomar. So the honorable mention I'm throwing out there, Zach, is going to be pre-2000s. And this is the one I kind of think about as like, shucks. It sucks that this guy never won a championship at all. Because, by the way, outside of Nomar, the other four on the list didn't win a championship anywhere. And this guy played for the Celtics one season in 1980, Larry Bird's rookie year, and they lost in the conference finals to Philadelphia. And then the next year, they won the title in 81. And that guy was the late, great Pistol Pete Maravich. Obviously, all-time basketball legend, was a player that wasn't really built to lead championship teams, but was such an icon in basketball, still iconic to this day. Pistol Pete, that means one thing, right? It doesn't mean the prospector in Toy Story. It means Pete Maravich, and he should have won a title, and he came very close to. And the story of that Celtics team was he really kind of sacrificed a lot. He kind of sacrificed the way he had played his whole life to chase that championship. Knew he had 1 year left, essentially, and they couldn't get it done. So that's my honorable mention. And those were the top 5 Boston athletes that just missed a championship in the city on the hill.
We are Rogue Media Sports.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. And if you like this video, be sure to give us a like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel a ton. You can follow me on Twitter here for some more outrageous Boston sports takes coming to you every weekday at noon Eastern time. And then after that, wherever you get your podcasts.
We are Rogue Media Sports.